Welcome to the Coachzing Show, offering you the latest creative content marketing tips to help you work less, earn more, and help more people. Are you a coach zinger yet? Join the community where the world's best coaches, therapists, authors, and speakers come to discover the latest industry trends and partner with other like-minded professionals. Go to coachzing.com/community to join. And now, here's your host, Doug Foresta.
Hello and welcome back to the Coachzing Show. This is Doug Foresta, your host. And let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought about one of the most basic pieces of content marketing that I'm really excited about this episode? My guest today is G. Marshall Johnson. And where we're going to start today is with the idea of your name as being your brand. And of course, it seems like something very fundamental, but it's also something that I haven't thought about too much. And I'm willing to bet that you haven't thought about that much at all. And so I know you'll get a lot out of this episode. Stay tuned. You'll also learn some great stuff about that'll make you think about whether you're attending to the fundamentals of your business, which is also really important. So great takeaways in this episode. And of course, G. Marshall Johnson is back with us as part of our Deeper Dive series, bringing back our best guests to go into a deeper discussion about business and content marketing. Founded in 1985, G. Marshall Johnson and Associates is a training and consulting coaching organization specializing in professional sales and marketing that combines the academic with practical application. For over 20 years, they have conducted ongoing studies to keep its clients focused on the habits, skills, and behaviors to drive their businesses to achieve the results they desire, focus on decision-making patterns and distribution forces in their marketing and sales tactics. Through these methods, G. Marshall Johnson Associates has found itself in a most unique position, being able to field test the data uncovered with hands-on application of direct processes that are reinforced through their consulting and coaching of business professionals. And it is the goal to help their clients increase their soft skills and improve in each area of core competencies. And you can learn more at gmarshalljohnson.com. That's the letter G, MarshallJohnson.com. G. Marshall Johnson, welcome back to the Coachzing Show.
Well, thank you, Doug. How are things? I am excited to be here, and as always, I will get probably amped up a little bit, but let's get started with some great stuff today.
Sounds good. So, yes, I wanted to talk about, we were chatting for a little bit before the show, and one of the things I thought was so fascinating is I had asked you the question about, so should I introduce you as G. Marshall Johnson? And you had a great story about how you became G. Marshall Johnson. I'm wondering if you could share that with us.
Oh, I'd be happy to. This goes back 10, 15 years ago, and I had the privilege of working in Zig Ziglar's office. Actually, I was sitting at his desk, and that is something that was a lot of fun to do. And of course, you have to work when you're sitting at that desk because all the things that he has promoted over the years and his intent and his desire for success for everyone. So I'm sitting at his desk, and the conversation that my name, being George Johnson, is somewhat bland. It's somewhat bland. And he looked at me and he said, you know what? There's only about 300,000 George Johnsons, and no one will remember you. So we're sitting there, and we looked back at some of the great sales trainers, some of the great people, and they would use names like J. Douglas Edwards. It just gave a little break to it, and even newscasters used it back in the 50s and 60s, I think. So using that type of thought pattern, he said, you're now G. Marshall Johnson. And using that over the years, obviously my website is named that, but it's taken a life of its own because a lot of people will play with me, and talk to me. Some people just call me G, the ultimate in shrinking of the name. And it's been quite fun, and using that as my brand. And I think a lot of times people, especially in your space that we're talking about, they come up with some very large names for their company, or they reach something creatively, but it may not mean anything to the general public, or when they're marketing, it's some sort of vague name that doesn't really get the phone calls coming to them. And that's what it's all about, setting up those new businesses and new clients, bringing them into the fold, because like you and I've got to know each other through our work together.
Yeah.
And it's a whole lot easier for me to talk to you now than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you're saying, and I love too it's one of the most basic things that we do in our business is, of course, tell people our names and to think about how we could brand that in a more interesting way is really fascinating. I think that that's just such an interesting thing. I also wanted to make sure the other thing that was interesting as well as I know you were talking about the question about sort of what does G. Marshall Johnson Associates do, and you were talking about how you've been able to help people really help their businesses take off by attending some business fundamentals, and I was wondering if you could say a little bit about that.
Well, when you're in consulting, and a lot of people use that moniker for what they do, consulting is obviously a vast field, but it depends on whether you're in information technology, and I'm really an old management consultant. I look at, when I go into a company, I typically find that the dysfunction that's going on, if there is any, typically is people-oriented versus an analytical problem. You can identify some of the major consulting firms of the world believe that you can tell everything about a company by its income statement. I believe that you can to a great extent because many times companies will get started, they're family-owned or they're small, and they're running, really on a cash flow basis. If they have enough money today, they're successful. If they don't tomorrow, they're not. But rather than planning things out in such a manner that it does away with the urgencies, many companies and many owners that I'm sure will be hearing this conversation have I would almost guarantee nearly all of them at one time or other, it's Wednesday and they can't make payroll on Friday.
Right.
And so the whole direction of the company changes to, really a lot of activity that could have been planned so this didn't have to happen. And that's how we look at things. First of all, we want to look at that part of a company so that in your business, my business, cash flow is a very important thing. I mean, as Zig used to say, it's damn near close to oxygen, and I
Yeah.
think it is. As long as you've got a cash flow, you can make things happen. But a lot of people get tied up in the weeds and don't want to make those calls, collection calls, or whatever that is, or have not set up a payment method so that at the first of the month the credit cards are dinged or whatever. So I would say, looking at your basic business fundamentals, there is systems. And there are systems and procedures that can help you. And even in a small practice, even if, let's say, you're a independent solo practitioner and your income's, I don't know, it's not that enormous, you have $165,000 or $200,000 a year. You still need to manage that because there are going to be months when people don't pay you. There are going to be times when, you get a surprise. So it's very important that part of it get really entrenched when you're starting a business. No one likes to talk about the accounting side of something at first. We want to talk about the joys of the business, how compelling our product or our service is. But really, if you don't take care of the other, you may not get a chance to spread your product around the world.
What's interesting, too, as you say that, I'm thinking that really ties into content marketing, too, because if you get to a place where you're, like you said, it's like oxygen. It's like you can't breathe in your business because you're not bringing in the income. I've got to think that impacts the way that you then go out and talk to people about what you do. I mean, I'm curious if you've seen that. In other words, is there sort of a different energy about how you go out in the world in your business when you don't have the cash flow versus when you do?
Well, I think all I can do is reverse that question to you, and I think being that we both are probably over 40, there have been times in your life probably when you looked at your bank account and you went, holy cow, or you were just starting your career. And I will tell you, I think it does affect every way you present yourself. If you're concerned about that at a high level, it's really going to be hard to bring your best self, your best face to your client, because really, when we go out and we talk with our clients as coaches and masterminds, we're there to help them go to the next level. We're there to help them see what things they're not doing, perchance. And in doing that, there's some persuasion we have to do. And I think that persuasion certainly drops down when you are uncomfortable with where you are that way. If the finances are eating at your brain, it's going to be difficult. So the gist of my starting that with, as we lead into content, is that may be a big part of content of starting a business or maintaining or growing it, is how am I going to fund this? How am I going to be comfortable with it? Let me give you one quick story about a gentleman who is a client of mine, and I'm very proud of him. His name is Mr. Marriott, Peter Marriott. And Peter came to me. He was working for one of those very large insurance companies, and he wanted to go out on his own. And we planned it for a year. We made sure he had enough money in his bank account he could live for 1 year without changing one thing that he did. He and his wife had enough money after working on it so that he could start his business. He could go to it every day and know that every 2 weeks he would be getting paid just what he used to get paid. Well, let's fast forward that story. I talked to him late yesterday afternoon. He's published a book, which I helped him with. He has now, in 2 years, replaced his income as a vice president of a major insurance company. And he did that by having a plan, making sure the money wasn't going to be a problem for him going through it. Now, believe me, Doug, I would get phone calls that first 6 months that were almost, George, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? Because it didn't take off like that. But now, 2.5 years into it, it's rocking and rolling. And so that's an example kind of what we're talking about, planning and then making sure that part is taken care of.
Yeah, that's really great. I think of it like the way I kind of think of it too is it's kind of like dating in a way. Like it's like, if you walk into a bar and you're just a little bit too desperate, there's that energy.
Yeah, and I guess it's the fear, the old animal pheromones. They smell it,
Yeah.
And again, there are people that do take advantage of you when you are desperate. That's for sure. One of the great things I like about what you're doing is talking about content. And, we live in a unique time, I think, and you probably have some thoughts on this yourself, is that content is exploding. I mean, there's content everywhere that you look. I mean, and valuable content that you can pick up on. My normal week, because I like to read a lot, is every day I make sure the Wall Street Journal is part of my day. One of the better papers that most people don't spend a lot of time with, but you can find out a lot going on around the world. And so I pick up a lot of content from those kind of things. I make sure that New York Times is obviously on Sundays is one of my reads. But more than that, it's just the daily content that's put out in the world. There's so many great things going on. I know there was a book that I crossed recently called Lynchpin. Are you familiar with that book?
Seth Godin. Great book, yeah.
Yeah, and great content of talking about where people's mindsets in the world are changing because depending on your age, and I'm thinking sometimes our audience may be people who are disenfranchised a bit, meaning that they've gotten to be 50 or 55 and find themselves without that job they had counted on. And I think Seth makes a great segue there about that whole working for someone and a life has changed. It's changed, and either you're changing and adapting with it and growing, or you're fighting it, and that ship's left the harbor.
Well, one of the things that you said that got me really excited was about when you said, like, there's so much content out there and the world has changed. And not only, I wonder your thoughts about this, but not only, to me, what's so exciting is not only that we can consume more content, but, you couldn't start your own newspaper, back in the early 1900s, unless you were, had some significant amount of money. But now, not only can we consume more content, but any business owner can become the media. They can create their own content, which I think is super exciting.
Well, we go back to when they used to call, and this goes back telling my experience, that internal communications for companies used to be called house organs. I don't know how they came up with that. House organs. But if you think about it, we have all had this for a long time, I guess, with the advent of the typewriter and now the computer. It goes lightning fast, and people can create a presence that, for example, our connection, you and I think through a mutual internet friend, Michael Angier, have connected. There's just so many ways now that Michael lives in Florida. He's from Vermont. You're in California, I believe, right?
Massachusetts, other side.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to be in California. That'd be nice. Thanks for putting me there.
Yeah. No wonder you wanted to have 11 o'clock meeting today.
That's right.
But my point being, you're in Mass. I'm in Charlotte. Michael's in Florida. And we communicate as if we were in the same town because of all the unique communication tools we have.
Very, very true. Yeah, it just is amazing. The other thing that I was curious about, you talked about, going back to the cash flow situation, and you talked about how people kind of shoot themselves in the foot. I'm curious about what are the things that people do. You talked about like collections, but what are the things do you see people do that could really increase their cash flow?
Well, depending on the business, of course. Depending on the business. As a consultant, I make sure that whatever I do is paid monthly in advance. I don't want to be dealing or trying to chase somebody later if they don't go forward or they stop a project. So I would think looking at a billing method that works for you if you have clients. Let's say you have 25 clients that you're dealing with on a personal one-on-one basis. I would certainly set up the billing so that each month their credit cards are dinged up front, so then you don't have to have that conversation, because collecting money changes the dynamics of what you're doing. If I have to call you today and say, Doug, look, I need to reach out to you about this $2,000. Well, we're not going to probably have the same open dialogue that we would if you'd already paid it.
Right. That's a very good point. You're right, because now we're not going. And how's everything going, by the way? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, now let's jump back into all the personal stuff we normally talk about.
Right. Right. Exactly.
The segue there is it's just not going to work that way. But I would say look at a method so that your clients understand that this is what's going to happen. Get their agreement to it, and then keep it going that way, and you're not going to find yourself at the other end. Now, the clients I have found many times over the years, sometimes people will pay you and absolutely go away. They expect nothing in return. Why? I don't know. Other times, and again, I will say this uncategorically after a lifetime of being involved in business, your worst clients in all of our businesses are the ones you've given the deepest discounts to.
Yeah.
When you have all made that special arrangement with someone, it is always going to come back to you. And the person that you charged double or triple to because you didn't have time and you fit them in, they're your happiest clients. I don't know why. From selling of business products to selling financial investments, it is always the case.
That is such a good point. That definitely resonates for me. I can think of a few when I first got started. I think, oh my God, I should have charged them 8 times as much.
Right, because you did the work. You did all of your things.
Right.
And they seem to want more. And I don't know that people will understand that. I have many people, coaches. I have a great one in Chicago who was always calling me about, well, if I lower my price or if I give away a free service, then I'll get more. And really all I found out later was, he never really was able to get his business started because he was trying to do things in a different model that, again, mine may be old, but it's a profitable one.
Yep. And a non-profitable business is not a business.
Well, there you go. Right? It's just a hobby.
It's just a hobby. Exactly. So please tell people how they can. I mentioned earlier, but please tell people. You mentioned what you did, but if you can say a little bit more about how you help people and how they can find you.
Well, certainly the easiest way is go to Google, type in G. Marshall Johnson, and you will find me. Again, G. Marshall Johnson, and you'll find me. My email is george@gmarshalljohnson.com. And again, the best way to send an inquiry, we'll set up a time to talk, and we'll kind of investigate if there's some sort of fit between us. I don't do everything, but I do have a lot of experience with startup businesses as well as businesses that are mature. My background, I started basically the big corporate life was with Xerox back in its day when it was kicking company, and then I went into financial services. So I was on Wall Street for a number of years. So I have a unique from product to service kind of background, and that's all been very helpful in helping small businesses grow. I really enjoy working with businesses that employ 20 to 100 people, although on my corporate roster for training, I do have Wells Fargo and a lot Arthur Gallagher and a lot of larger companies that use me for specific type of workshops and things. But that's who I really enjoy because I can see the most help from them. You know, that we can implement things and we can see them immediately take hold. For example, one of the recent clients I worked with, and maybe I mentioned to you earlier, was that I was brought in with a managed shakeup. First quarter last year, they lost $166,000. Bringing in my accounting guys and everybody in 3 months of this year, they made close to $220,000. And all of that was getting back to fundamentals, getting back to making sure things are billed, making sure the clients who didn't pay. For example, I even got involved with collections for them. I called them, one of their clients was a bank. No, the invoice is 10 months old, 10 months. I called the lady, she said, I have no idea what you're talking about. We've never gotten an invoice from you. And the point was, it was $20,000, and no one at that company had bothered to call them.
Oh, my gosh.
So, I don't think that is unusual. I know many people say, well, it never happened to me. Believe me, when you're turning out hundreds of invoices a week, things happen.
Yeah.
They happen all the time.
G. Marshall Johnson, thank you so much. Been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for returning to the Coachzing Show and sharing your words of wisdom with us.
And thank you for inviting me and all good things. Take care, my friend.
Thank you. So thanks, everyone, for listening. And remember, nothing you've heard here is going to make any difference in your life unless you take action. So get out there and make it happen. We'll be back Monday through Friday with more great guests helping you to work less, earn more, and help more people. Till next time, this is Doug Foresta at The Coachzing Show.
Thanks for listening to The Coachzing Show. Need help getting your book out of your head and onto paper? Need help marketing your books or speaking engagements? We can do it for you. Go to Coachzing.com to learn more. Are you a coach singer yet? Join the Coach Singers community where the world's best coaches, therapists, authors, and speakers meet. You'll get exclusive access to private mastermind calls where you can get instant marketing help from industry experts. Plus, we'll help you forge deals and partnerships with other like-minded professionals. Go to Coachzing.com/community to join now.